Welcome to this explainer. Okay, I want you to start by closing your eyes for just a second and picturing this scene in your mind. Imagine you're in medieval England. The year is 1400. You've just been convicted of high treason. At the very first light of dawn, you're pulled from your cell, bound, and marched right through the center of the city to the execution square. Massive crowds have gathered just to watch your final moments. And right there, smack in the middle of it all, is a wooden block. Beside it stands an executioner holding a massive, heavy axe.
You're forced to your knees, and you place your neck on that block. You can literally feel your neck stretching out. It's cold, it's totally exposed, and incredibly vulnerable against that rough wood. Then you hear it, the heavy, terrifying whoosh of the axe being raised high into the air, right before it swings down. In that agonizing, heart-pounding moment of anticipation, your absolute only thought, your only prayer, is hoping the executioner is a trained professional who actually knows how to aim. Because trust me, the alternative is an indescribable nightmare.
Okay, let's dive into this. Before we get into exactly what happens to your spinal cord or whether your head can somehow remain conscious after it's detached from your body, we really need to strip away the fiction. Let's do a quick, modern, educational analysis of the most common myths surrounding decapitation. So, first question. When your head is cut off, do you actually die instantly?
Well, the answer is incredibly complex. The myth tells us it's an instant, painless death, right? Like a simple flip of a switch. But the truth? The brain doesn't just die in that exact fraction of a second. It actually takes about 10 to 15 seconds for the brain to completely burn through the oxygen it was holding before it totally shuts down. Now sure, if the executioner is a true professional with a razor-sharp sword, the strike might happen so fast that your pain nerves don't even have time to register what happened. But remember, having a true professional back then, that was extremely rare. So let's shift our focus over to Section 1, the biology of severance, and look at the sheer biological mechanics of a strike.
Just think about the anatomical highway a massive axe has to brutally force its way through. Skin, thick neck muscles, dense cartilage, major blood vessels, the trachea, the esophagus, and finally, the spinal cord. To do all of this in a single, clean strike, the blade has to pass absolutely perfectly through the tiny natural space between your vertebrae. Only then is the communication between the brain and the body instantly and completely severed.
Now, what's really interesting about this slide is how the body's systems react to being disconnected. Your heart? It might actually keep beating for a few seconds. That's because the heart has its own internal electrical pacemaker. But breathing, that stops immediately. Your lungs require constant nerve signals traveling down from the brainstem, so the second that connection is cut, respiration stops dead.
Which brings us to a heavily debated, frankly terrifying scientific question. Is that severed head still conscious? Historically, there are tons of accounts, especially from the French Revolution, where witnesses swore that severed heads were blinking, tracking movement with their eyes, or even moving their lips like they were trying to speak. But is that actual consciousness or just random biological muscle spasms?
Since we obviously can't ethically test this on people today, science is somewhat divided here. We basically have two main theories. Theory 1 argues for an instant loss of consciousness. The idea is that the massive, immediate drop in blood pressure just knocks you right out. Boom, lights out. But Theory 2 suggests there is a tiny, horrifying window of awareness. Because oxygen-rich blood is still physically inside the severed head, neurons actually remain active for seconds, meaning the brain might still be processing its new reality.
Let's darken the tone a bit and look at Section 2, the nightmare of botched executions.
5 to 6. I really want you to think about that number. Everything we just talked about assumes a clean cut. But the grim historical reality of the Middle Ages is that executioners were often untrained, poorly equipped, or even drunk. Because of this, it sometimes took 5 to 6 brutal, agonizing strikes to fully sever a head. The axe would hit, bite into bone, and the head would just stay attached. The executioner has to swing again and again. And during those first strikes, the victim is often fully conscious, choking, and feeling every bit of it.
This horrific reality was exactly why Anne Boleyn made a very specific choice. She knew how brutally people were being butchered by amateurs, so she paid extra, out of her own pocket, to bring in a highly skilled professional swordsman from France. She wanted to absolutely guarantee a flawless single strike, and she actually got it. Her execution was perfectly clean.
Let's move to and see how this builds into Section 3, 15 seconds of consciousness. Let's look at the timeline from the victim's perspective.
At 0 seconds, the blade drops so fast the nerves don't even transmit traditional pain. From 1 to 5 seconds, if you are conscious, it is pure, unadulterated confusion. The world is just spinning, and you realize you are entirely detached from your own body. From 5 to 10 seconds, hypoxia begins setting in. Your vision starts to darken around the edges, and the sounds of the crowd fade out. By 10 to 15 seconds, brain activity fully collapses. Anything you see after that is just mere muscle reflex.
So the crucial point here is that even if you are fully conscious during those first few seconds, you are completely powerless. You literally cannot scream. Why? Because your lungs stayed with your body on the block. There's no airflow to push up through your vocal cords. You are utterly, completely trapped in silence inside your own head.
Thankfully, by the 5 to 10 second mark, hypoxia takes over. Hypoxia is just the dangerous deprivation of oxygen at the tissue level. The neurons rapidly die off. It's not like falling asleep, it's more like someone walking through your brain and turning off the lights room by room until there's just nothing left.
Moving on to Section 4, a brutal historical spectacle, and how this method was used across the globe.
Just briefly looking at this table shows you how widespread this was. Ancient Rome used it as punishment for citizens. Medieval Europe used it as a massive public spectacle. Feudal Japan tied it deeply to samurai honor, and the French Revolution, they turned it into mechanized mass execution. Across the board, it was favored because it was a highly visible, incredibly swift demonstration of absolute power. But it was in 1789 that the French Revolution introduced a chillingly efficient solution to the nightmare of the botched execution.
Enter the guillotine. Now, we think of it today as the ultimate symbol of terror, right? But it was actually designed to be a merciful machine. The whole goal was to completely remove human error. It was literally engineered to guarantee that flawless single strike, no matter how tired or unskilled the executioner was. So we've looked at the biology, the incredibly fine line between an instant end and a botched nightmare. But if that tiny window of consciousness really does exist before the hypoxia takes over, literally seeing the world without a body, totally unable to make a sound as the lights slowly fade out, are those final 15 seconds of awareness the ultimate human nightmare? It's a deeply unsettling thought for sure, and one that should make us all incredibly thankful that public executions are firmly in the past. Thanks for exploring this with us.